Like, even with the CIA stuff, he was like, do you want to talk to anybody? I was like, what do you mean? Who do you know?
Does Milo Ventimiglia have an in at the CIA? His Company You Keep co-star Catherine Henna Kim weighs in. And we've got the stories that define the week on People in 10. I'm Makon Dovu, bringing you everything you need to know about pop culture right now. 10 minutes are on the clock, so let's get to it with the first 5. Starting with a family celebration as Bruce Willis turns 68, his first birthday since being diagnosed with frontotemporal dementia.
Happy birthday, dear Dad.
Bruce's ex-wife Demi Moore posted photos and a home video of the whole family rallied around him. The man of the hour looked delighted, pumping his fists and blowing out his candles to cheers.
But the occasion was also bittersweet for his wife, Emma Hemming.
I have started the morning by crying.
Emma says it's important to show both sides. She's staying strong for their kids, but she also feels grief every day.
Don't cry, Emma.
In a new reel, Hemming shared some adorable moments of Willis over the years, spending time with her and their children.
I'll be loving you forever.
The actor's 3 eldest daughters also posted touching tributes with heartfelt birthday wishes for their dad. Moving on to a story you've been following closely on People.com.
Law Roach is setting the record straight.
This week, the recently retired stylist addressed rumors of drama with his past clients, including Priyanka Chopra Jonas.
Priyanka claimed at South by Southwest that just one day earlier, a stylist made her cry over not being sample size.
That's impossible.
Many fashion fans think Roach was the person in question because he styled her for an event the day prior.
But he tells The Cut that he, quote, never had that conversation with Priyanka. He blames, in his words, her gatekeepers for taking his words out of context.
And as for that seating kerfuffle with Zendaya,
and I really regret it.
Law says this was not Zendaya's fault.
In a video from Paris Fashion Week, Zendaya appears to gesture for Roach to sit behind her at Louis Vuitton.
Normally we've seen them sit side by side, so this had some fans calling Zendaya rude.
But according to Roach, someone was in his seat when they arrived at the show, and no one could tell him where his actual seat was.
He says Zendaya was explaining where her assistant was sitting when she gestured to the second row, not telling him to sit there.
Swifties everywhere are mesmerized, and the Eras Tour is just getting started. Taylor Swift is wowing fans with her new choreography, which includes the swan dive into the stage. The moment has since gone viral as fans speculate how the stunt is done. This as Adam Sandler dives into the conversation surrounding Chris Rock's jokes about Jada Pinkett Smith.
I sat, watched him in my kitchen, laughed my ass off.
Sandler was honored at the 24th annual Mark Twain Prize for American Humor this week, but first, he defended his longtime friend when asked if Rock went too far during his live Netflix special.
I thought he was unbelievably relaxed, funny, thoughtful, crushed it, was real to himself.
And while the cast of Succession is often at odds on screen, they came together in real life to premiere the show's 4th and final season.
Well, that's heartening. That's heartening.
And speaking of new seasons, should we start calling it only weddings in the building? Selena Gomez is going bridal as she films season 3 of the Hulu hit with Steve Martin and Martin Short. Next up, the post that had us talking this week. Shaquille O'Neal gave fans a scare with this photo from the hospital, reportedly for a hip operation, but he made sure to check in on his TNT co-host from his bed. This as Jamie Lee Curtis hinted at injuring her foot at the Oscars. She posted this pic jumping for joy on stage, alongside a medical boot positioned next to her trophy. Her caption? The thrill of victory and the agony of defeat. Her famous friends were quick to wish her well. And while Princess Kate celebrated Mother's Day in the UK with newly released snaps of the royal kiddos, Keke Palmer is basking in that new mom bliss on a day out with baby Leo. She writes that motherhood is her greatest gig of all. And Kaylee Cuoco is almost ready to join her. She showed off her growing belly in a mirror selfie as she and actor Tom Pelphrey count down to the arrival of their baby girl. NSYNC's self-titled album hit American airwaves 25 years ago this week. Turning Justin, JC, Joey, Lance, and Chris into global superstars.
Debut album was insane for us. You know, we had lived in Germany for a couple of years and we had already released an album, but this was our chance to prove ourselves in our own country.
And boy, did they.
It was really that Disney special that really blew us up. So that album went from, you know, maybe being in a top 50 to just skyrocketing.
I thought it was going to be our Super Bowl. You know, I thought this was everything that we worked for was this show.
The group would go on to become one of the best-selling boy bands of all time.
Crazy thing about it is we're in a history book, really.
Yeah.
There's a lot of history things that we did. I'll be gone years from now and people will still know who we are.
Now let's move on to some screen time. I am so excited to be joined by Haena Kim, who stars in the heist drama The Company You Keep, Sundays, 10/9 Central on ABC.
Relationships. What a racket.
Shell game to conceal who you really are.
So I'm gonna ask you 5 questions. For question number 1, you'll give me 1 answer. Question number 2, you'll give me 2 answers, and so on and so forth. Are you ready to get started?
Yes, let's go.
And you play Emma, an undercover CIA officer who becomes entangled with a con man named Charlie, who is played by Milo Ventimiglia. This show is sneaky, it's action-packed, it's so hot. What is one way this role is different from anything you've ever done?
It's actually interesting because I feel like if I sat down with an agent and I said, over the course of my career, I want to play all these different kinds of roles, it's all been sandwiched together into this one role. I mean, she's badass, she's a CIA officer. You have the love story where you have a couple that doesn't really make any sense. They're on opposite sides of the law, but you want to root for them anyway. You get the family drama. It's everything. It's a kitchen sink of shows.
I read that this show is actually based on a Korean series called My Fellow Citizens. Now, I know that your parents are actually Korean immigrants. Did it make it more fun to be involved in the series?
Oh, absolutely. It's funny because I wanted to learn how to read and write Korean a little bit better over the pandemic. And since I've started taking lessons and classes, but I got obsessed with Korean dramas. My mom and I watched them all the time. It started with Crash Landing on You, then it went to Itaewon Class, Beauty Inside, Hotel Del Luna. I mean, I can go on and on. So it makes it a little extra special and a little extra fun for sure.
You and Milo, the chemistry on the screen was exploding. So what are 2 things you were surprised to learn about Milo Ventimiglia?
I learned that he is referred to as Uncle Donut by his friends' kids because he would bring them donuts all the time and they would be like, when is Uncle Donut coming through? And he's kind of like a Renaissance man. There's nothing he doesn't do. It's really interesting. Like even with the CIA stuff, he was like, do you want to talk to anybody? I was like, what do you mean? Who do you know?
He knows people in the CIA? Is that what I'm hearing?
I mean, I'm not sure, yes. I don't know who he was going to get me to talk to.
Well, he's been on our radar since the Gilmore Girls, and I'm curious, have you watched the show? Are you a big fan of it?
I watched a little bit of Gilmore Girls, but I think it's more This Is Us. I cried probably every week with everybody else watching.
We follow you on Instagram. Your travel photos are stunning. What are 3 places that you've traveled to that just left the biggest impression on you and why?
Living in California, I feel like my girlfriends and I have been doing a lot of road trips in the last few years because America is so beautiful and there's so many national parks. The last time I did a big hike, we did 17.5 miles. It was the entire west rim of Zion. Nice. And I got to see terrain I've never seen before. We did Angel's Landing. It was gorgeous. My best friend got married in Rome, and then a group of our friends actually and I hopped down to Puglia, which is the boot of Italy. And I feel like it's not as explored yet. It's so beautiful. There are all these old farmhouses that have been turned into B&Bs called masserias. You have olive tree groves. It's the only place in Italy where they can grow rosé grapes. So I did try that. I loved Mexico City a lot. It has this almost like generalized European feel with all of the squares, but the food is so good. There's so much history there.
I read that you actually studied psychology at the University of Virginia. Can you tell me 4 ways that your psychology background helps you get into character?
I think I've just always been really fascinated by people and stories. I think everybody has a story to tell. She keeps things very close to the vest, but I think she has to, right? I think she's very particular about who she lets in. So, I mean, somebody like that to let a con artist in, I mean, they say love is blind. And I also just love how curious she is. I always joke and I say, I'm curious about important things like what I'm gonna have for lunch tomorrow. She is very curious about how we got here and what drives somebody to do this and how do we prevent this from ever happening again. It's fascinating to me.
And finally, give us 5 reasons to watch The Company You Keep.
It's a fun ride. Enjoy.
What do you do?
I'm a yoga instructor. You?
I'm a pageant queen turned rocket scientist.
I bet those pageants really prepared you for NASA, though.
Catherine, thank you so much for joining me. Now, everyone, be sure to watch The Company You Keep. It airs Sundays, 10/9 Central on ABC. All right, time's up. See you back here next Thursday.